you wonder. Here's a good one for you, Gary. Our best estimate right now is that this was carved somewhere around 200 BC to 300 AD. It could have been 1000 AD, somewhere in that 1,000-year range. We really don't know. But what tool could have been used to get these incredibly detailed carvings on such a small stone? And why did they do it? I mean, what was the whole purpose behind this? But what fascinates me is, the carvings are so intricate. I just wonder what kind of tool a person used. They couldn't have used a stone axe.
No,
to carve this little tiny stone.
Even the tools we have today to sit there and to carve on a rock like that type of rock would take forever. You basically would be scratching it. You couldn't be gouging it out to, do what I see here. So they've had to have something, that was capable of doing it. And that's the interesting part right there.
Yeah, hours and hours and hours would have been required. So I'll give you, we've had this looked at by a lot of different people. Not a lot of experts have looked at it yet, because what I'm talking to you about right now hasn't really been published. In fact, I'm making a presentation Friday at the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society conference in Escanaba, Michigan, showing these images for the first time, because no one's seen these other than a couple of radio shows that we've done. But I think that this object may have been carved as a passport. If you consider the possibility that someone was going to take a great sea voyage, they would have to have a letter of credit. They got to buy provisions. They've got to hire sailors. They've got to hire ships. And in the period of time when this would have been carved, most people were illiterate. And so my thinking is that this was commissioned by either a church or a monarch who is sending an expedition for profit. And if it fits in with the copper culture, they were coming to North America to get copper to take it back to Europe to supply the Bronze Age. And because you make bronze from a combination of copper and tin. And so this kind of an object, the captain of the ship or the procurer, the quartermaster, could go to anyone and say, we're purchasing these objects, these items, here's our passport, and you build a king, and everyone would have known what it was, whether they were literate or not.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, but still, and looking at the engravings on this, and I'll tell you, and, and the amount of wear, too, from, the weather, for, the freezing, the sunlight, and all this other stuff. I just wonder what the stone looked like, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, I would love to have seen it. Then, if you look at the side that has the crescent moon, or it says 5 crescent or 6 buckle, which is the same side but flipped 180 degrees. The middle cartouches are difficult to see, and the ones where the white veining is completely worn away. So this has been washed around and rubbed on rocks, and the fact that it was ever even found is astounding. And that we have photographic tools that can get this kind of detail out of it. But what it must have been, one of the reasons I think that it may have had significant importance on an ecclesiastical level is all the experts who I've talked to, who've looked at these images, who know about ancient cultures, tell me that the white vein that's running through this stone, there's a little white vein that's running through it, that this was an important aspect of something that had sacred value. And these stones were chosen that had that white vein to receive these kinds of engravings because they had that white vein in them.
Interesting. Now, any of these experts look at it and try to get an idea what it was actually intended for, besides maybe, replacement of monetary?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a great question. That's a great question. I took this stone to the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society conference 3 years ago, and everybody looked at it because I pestered the hell out of them. Excuse my language. I pestered them. And no one had any clue what was going on. And then in a chance meeting a few days later, we spotted the men, because we hadn't noticed that there were men carved on this. And so I'm taking it back there Friday in the hopes that some of these experts, and there'll be people from all over the world who will be there, that they'll be able to look at it now and say, oh, well, yeah, well, here's these men, and this is what this means, this is what that symbol means. No one's looked at this other than Dr. Duff, who's an expert on antiquities from Chile and South America. He's looked at it, and his belief is that a lot of these symbols are South American or Central American, but he's the only one who sees it that way. In day after tomorrow is when this will be exposed to about 50 experts who know about this kind of stuff, and then hopefully, because I don't know, I'm a storyteller, I just ran across this in northern Michigan and tracked it down for years. Hopefully they'll be able to tell me what these symbols actually represent and who could have done it and why they would have done it.
That is so interesting. And the guy was just looking for agates, and he found it?
Charlie McIntosh, he owns, in fact, I'm speaking to you from the Name Inn in Name, Michigan, which is a haunted inn. And he owns it, and he's a lumberman, and he goes out and marks trees for these big companies who recycle trees. They cut trees and then they replant. So he manages all that. And when he's waiting for someone else to show up, he goes and walks along the shore and he picks up agates and brings them home and polishes them. And so this was found just sheer chance back about 1980 is when he found it. So it's been about 40 years since this was found, and no one's been able to figure out what the thing is yet.
Have you thought?
The other thing that we're hoping to have done, and I don't know how this fits in with your audience, but I've had a number of audiences want to know if we've had, is it psychometric? Is that the right word?
Yeah,
where people take readings. They read crystals, and they can read the spiritual aspects of something. So we're hoping to have some of those kind of readings done on this stone as well.
Have you thought about taking it to, like, the church and pictures and send it to them and see if anybody in their department could figure out what it is?
That's brilliant. I had not thought of that. Any ideas on which church I should try?
Well,
got any ideas on that? A specific church?
The Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church goes back to when they used to persecute people, and all that stuff back.
I don't think that's a good way to approach them.
You don't say that.
But you look at this for me?
Yeah, they've been around for a long time, and if you send them a picture and ask, they, any of the priests or stuff like that, they have, the church has their own department for stuff like this, and it might be able to give you some type of answer. Because who knows actually what it could be.
Well, I agree with that way more than you might think, because to my eye, what I'm seeing is a knight in the middle of the stone is a knight kneeling like he's receiving a blessing.
Uh-huh.
And to his right is what appears to me to be a bishop or a holy man who's even got a halo around his head with his hands up, who's delivering the blessing. And behind the knight on the extreme left of the stone is it's very hard to see it, but there's another individual there who's kneeling almost like he's a squire to that knight. So what this looks to me like is a noble receiving a blessing from a church official, a bishop or a pope, to be sent off to do the church's bidding. I mean, it looks exactly like that to me. So I think your idea is excellent to take it to the church. I'm not sure if I've got the right church here around Escanaba, Michigan, But I would love to. I will try that and see what kind of responses we get back, because it is an enigmatic object, and it does exist. If people want to see it, they can come here and actually see this. I'm going to take it to the conference on Wednesday, so people can actually, this still exists, and we actually have it in our possession. So it's not something that's been lost. It's real, and we have it. People can actually look at the physical object.
Yeah, I would think that the Archbishop or anybody like that, if you could find, one in your state or area that, could, and send them a picture and do a letter of it. And
I may have to go to confession first. It's been a while since I've...
But who knows, that might give you an answer what you're looking for.
Yeah. Now, are there any churches out your way we could send some copies of the pictures to... do you know anybody?
Well, the best thing I would do...
I'm interviewing you now, so I'd turn this around on you.
I would Google it. That's what I would do.
You would Google it.
Yeah, and find a bishop.
It's a very good dodge there, Gary. That's a very good dodge.
Hey, my whole life is Google it. If you're not sure, Google it.
Google it. If you're not sure, don't ask me, Google it.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on with the Macintosh stone. And just so you know, I think that this object is tied to the... Are you aware of the copper trade that took up here, the prehistoric copper trade?
No, I'm not. I don't know your area at all.
If we've got a couple of minutes, I could give you a quick history on that.
We're going to have to go on break here in about 2.5 minutes. But again, why don't you tell the people your books, how they can find them, and then, that'll kill the 2.5 minutes, and then we'll go on break, and then we can go into the next subject for the next half an hour.
Yeah, we can do the copper after that. Yeah, well, I can talk about myself for a lot more than 2.5 minutes. But yeah, so MichiganBackroads.com, MichiganBackroads.com. That's the website. If you go there, you can find the link to the slideshow that we're talking about. It shows these pictures. And you can also find the links to all of my books, which are primarily road trips on the back roads of Michigan. I don't do famous. I don't do Mackinac Island. I don't do Saugatuck. I don't do Traverse City. I do out-of-the-way places where you can find interesting things like the Macintosh stone or like the Newberry tablets. Those are the kinds of things that I write about, plus some really cool places to go fishing and go swimming.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've been half across the country, Michigan, and that area I've never been to. And, it's I have a friend that lives in Michigan, and they tell me it's a lovely place to live.
A beautiful, beautiful state. And half of it is national or state forests, and we have more state forests and national forests than any state in the United States other than Alaska. So it's a place that people, I think who's the guy who wrote the Edmund Fitzgerald? This is a place for sportsmen. People love to play outdoors in Michigan.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Anyway, we're going to go on break. We're going to be back in about 4 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. We're interviewing Ron. And again, tell them where you can find on your website, where they can look at this stone with the engraving.
Yeah, go to MichiganBackroads.com, and at the very top of the very first sentence on the home page, I put a link to a slideshow that shows the images that we're discussing.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's well worth looking at. It kind of intrigues me quite a bit, actually. Anyway, we'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. I'm going to mute the line here for about 4 minutes. Go get a cup of coffee or whatever you need, Ron, and we'll be back.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, sir.